Good evening. This is the regularly scheduled April meeting of the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission. I am Paul Zomer, the chairman of the commission. In order to help reduce background noise, I would remind all commissioners to mute themselves except when addressing the commission or applicant. The Historic Commission's function is to listen to the testimony presented by an applicant and others with an interest in the city in any case before us. The commission hears pertinent evidence from the applicants and virtual audience, determines the facts based on evidence and testimony, considers and deliberates among themselves, and then makes a determination in accordance with the ordinance, standards, policies, and guidelines as adopted by the Geneva City Council. This meeting will be conducted by video conference using the GoToWebinar virtual platform. With our use of electronic meeting platform for this meeting, we expect there may be some technical difficulties as we move through our agenda. Please bear with us. The meeting will proceed without a physically present quorum in the Historic Preservation Commission because of the disaster declaration related to COVID-19 and the public health concerns affecting the city of Geneva. With the exception of limited city staff and myself, all the commissioners and applicants and most participating in tonight's meeting are in different locations in accordance with social distancing guidelines as allowed by most recent guidelines. Some applicants and guests may attend the meeting in the city council chambers following all precautionary protocols. It is important that cases scheduled for tonight be heard in order to continue city business and without delay to the applicants. Moving forward will enable ongoing construction, development, protection of property values, and preservation of historic resources, and promotion of the city's economic vitality. Every individual desiring to listen and/or participate in the meeting has been provided an opportunity through the virtual participation information, including various public notices and the agenda for this meeting. At this point, I will describe the remote proceedings of the Historic Preservation Commission for those who are not familiar with the process. For each item on the agenda tonight, this evening, our preservation planner will make a brief presentation regarding the specific request. The petitioner then will make a presentation of their proposal, and the members of the Historic Preservation Commission will then may ask questions of the applicant. Public participants may provide comments either through written comments or by speaking at the meeting. Each person will be provided equal amount of time to comment. When it is time for public comment, the staff will read into the record any comments received in writing in advance of the meeting. Following the reading of any written comments and any comments from the in-person attendees, members of the virtual audience who wish to speak will be asked to raise their hand through the virtual meeting platform hand-raising feature. Audience members will be called on, unmuted, and given an opportunity to comment. After providing comment, each speaker will be muted once again. Please note that there may be a slight delay between becoming unmuted and being able to begin speaking. All comments will be recorded so that written minutes can be prepared of this meeting. Just a reminder that all speakers are asked to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. If inappropriate language or comments are expressed during the meeting, the speaker will be muted and the speaker's participation ended. Tonight, for the benefit of those in the audience, I'm joined by Preservation Planner Michael Lambert, City Planner Chayton True, and Secretary Weiland. Secretary Weiland, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Hartman,
Here.
McManus,
Here.
Stazen,
Here.
Warner,
Here.
Zinke,
Here.
Solomon, and then Chairman Zelmer.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. Okay, the next item on our agenda is approval of the meeting minutes for April, or for March 16th, 2021. Did anyone have any comments about the meeting minutes for March? Okay, without any comments, can I get someone to motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Warner,
Okay, and someone to second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Lisa?
Was it Zinke or
Yes.
That was McManus,
Madison? Okay,
I believe so. Okay, and then will you call the,
yeah, the roll. Okay. Hartman?
Here. Wait.
No, for the
Aye
minutes.
or-
Aye or nay?
Aye.
Okay. McManus?
Aye.
Stays in?
Ding.
Warner?
Aye.
Zinke? Zinke? Turn on your mic.
I think she might have been,
I have to abstain. I wasn't here.
And Zelmer?
aye.
That passes.
Motion passes, thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is the review of building permit applications. 101 West State Street. Mr. Lambert?
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. Tonight, the first case is, as you said, 101 West State Street. It's a review of a storefront renovation proposal for the Rate Building. The property is located in the northeast corner of the local Geneva Historic District, and it's in the central Geneva Historic District listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The Rate Block is an important commercial corner with a history that begins nearly concurrent with the settlement of Geneva. The building has been a prominent landmark for nearly 170 years. It was remodeled to its present appearance just 20 years before the Lincoln Highway, the first paved transcontinental highway in the United States, which passed by its reconstructed facade. The 1853 Limestone Building is significant for its 1853 structure of locally quarried limestone, which is associated with the early settlement era of Geneva from 1837 to 1857, as well as for its 1893 facade of distinctive cream-colored brick, which is an excellent example of late Victorian-era commercial design. The Rate Building is significant for its association with community and economic development because of the numerous notable individuals, businesses, and organizations important to Geneva's development over time, including longtime businesses established by Jewish, Lithuanian, and Italian immigrants. Lastly, the property is notable as the work of local contractor Martin Seastrom, who remodeled the East Commercial Space with the Little Owl in 1935. Around 1837, a wood frame structure was built by Richard Adsit and John Dearmont on this site. The 30 by 50 building served as the Isaac Claypool store until 1843. Charles Patton and Scoto Clark established a general store in the existing wooden building until 1853, when they replaced the wooden structure with this present limestone building. George Welch was the mason. He also worked on the 3rd Kane County Courthouse and the Dunham Castle at Wayne, Illinois. The prominently sited building served as the center of commerce in the growing community and was known as the Old Corner. Many businesses located in the Old Corner building, including the post office and a barber shop that were located in the basement with entrances off the east side. Second floor offices and fraternal organizations included William Furslow of the Kane County Gazetteer and Directory, attorney J.H. Mayborn, attorney Augustus M. Harrington, who also served several terms as district attorney, a newspaper publisher, the Masonic Lodge, attorney H.E. Abbott, Dr. C.C. Harris, Benjamin Wilson, a printer, and Brown and West. In May 1890, the building was acquired at public auction by a group of local businessmen, including Dr. Gully, Samuel Lance, Francis S. Raitt of Geneva, and W.R.S. Hunter of Elburn. F.S. Raitt and his wife Jane came to the United States in 1853, first to Vermont, and in 1857 to Kewanee, Illinois, and later to Mendota, Illinois. In 1865, the Raitt family moved to Geneva. The new owners remodeled the building, which included the lowering of the floor approximately 2 feet on the west side of the building in 1891. The remodeled space opened as the Geneva Cash Grocery on October 3, 1891. However, in February of 1892, a fire in the building resulted in the collapse of the State Street facade. The following year, in 1893, an entirely new facade of distinctive cream-colored brick was erected along State Street. The facade was finished with an ornate sheet metal cornice and pediment at the roofline that identified the remodeled building as the Rate Block. In 1898, F.S. Raitt converted the second floor for use as Geneva's first moving picture house. About the same time, the east side of the ground floor was operating as a tavern, while the west side served as a dry goods store operated by Moore's Katzman. Beginning in 1904, the west commercial space was occupied by Emil Simon, a Lithuanian immigrant who arrived in 1891. He operated Simon's dry goods store for nearly 50 years, beginning a long tradition of business ventures established by the Simon family in the Geneva community. In 1908, the theater was abandoned and the second floor was converted to a dance hall, along with a ladies' room, men's smoking room, and a former apartment along the east wall. The hall was used for community musical and drama recitals, a billiards hall, and as a meeting hall for many local fraternal organizations. The west storefront of the rate block was remodeled in 1946 when the original cast iron columns were replaced with round columns that exist today, and the central recessed entry was installed. The east storefront of the rate block continued as a saloon, but later opened as an electric shop until 1935 when the Little Owl Saloon and Restaurant was opened by Augusto or Tony Lencioni. The Abruzzani and Van Turnout families were the second owners of Little Owl after Henry Van Turnout acquired the prominent building from the Rate descendants in 1972. The east storefront was remodeled in the mid to late 1970s. The landmark restaurant closed in October 2019 and was sold to its present owners. Although the landmark building shows signs of deferred maintenance, including spalling masonry, unpainted trim, and minor deterioration of the sheet metal cornice and pediment, the rate block is identified as a significant property within the Geneva Historic District and retains a high degree of architectural integrity. The present owners are requesting approval to renovate the existing storefronts as part of a larger renovation project. Following a review by the HPC nearly 16 months ago, the applicant is now seeking to modify their previous request by installing an operable or openable storefront comprised of sliding windows in place of the historic fixed display windows and recessed central entry portals at each storefront. The applicants have submitted two options for the replacement windows in the storefront. Option 1, provide fixed transoms with a depth to accommodate standard height window units. However, the window units will be custom sized to fit widths of the historic storefront bays. Recessed panels at the lower bulkhead will be reminiscent of the historic storefronts and aligned with breaks in the sliding window system. According to the documents provided by the applicant, the vertical columns will have a 6-inch face covered in material to match the windows, and between the fixed transom and the operable windows there will be a 3-inch intermediate rail plus an additional 5 1/8 inch of additional trim for a total of 8 1/8 inches between the transom and the operable windows. Option 2 is similar to option 1, except that it increases the depth of the fixed transoms to match the historical architectural lines and details of the 1893 storefronts. The deeper transoms align with the spring line of the arch over the central doorway as depicted in the historic photograph. The deeper transoms require custom height windows. However, as stated earlier, the window units will already be custom sized to fit the widths of the historic storefront bays. Again, recessed panels at the lower bulkhead will be reminiscent of the historic storefronts and align with breaks in the sliding window system. And the columns and the intermediate rails will be the same as in option 1. This detail view shows the front wall, which is identified in light yellow, and the dining room or the interior is identified in light bluish gray to the top of the image. The arrow points to the center entryway that will be the primary entrance to the new restaurant. The details below indicate specific details shown in the drawing. So on the left is the 6-inch face of the built-up columns between the operable window units. The next two images in the middle are sectional views that show the sliding or bypass windows that act much like a sliding patio door. And then the far right shows the intermediate rail detail that has the roughly 3-inch horizontal rail with the other frames that come to a total of 8 1/8 inches. The applicant has furnished several examples of what the sliding window units would appear to be installed. So these are actual installations. This is 2 different ones. The left picture and the upper right picture are of the same building, one looking at it sideways, so you can see how the windows bypass and are slightly offset from the same plane. The upper right is a straight-on view that shows how it looks basically, again, when you're looking at the storefront directly. And then another side view of a sample, so again, you can see the idea of how the 2-inch offset works between the individual units. And then again, just some other examples, a close-up image on the left of the upper right image, and then another example on the lower right. To meet the requirements of the Kane County Health Department, there will be a operable screen that will be mounted on the interior side of the exterior wall, so it will not be visible from the at the exterior wall, and it therefore is not subject to HPC review. In looking at the, oh, let me go slow. There we go. In looking at the submitted plans, I call to your attention that the proposal is to use the existing columns that exist at the storefront, which creates uneven bays across the front of the building. Typically, a historic storefront would have common central entryways, and then the display windows would be of equal sizes on either side of the entryway. However, this illustration shows how the cast iron columns have been moved over time, which is not uncommon with historic storefronts. Typically, the cast iron columns would have been located directly beneath the rondels, or those little round details in the upper lintel, and provide equal bays again around central doorways. The blue lines in this image show approximately where the columns have been moved to over time with various remodelings, and how they create different size bay openings on the storefront. The irregular bay width is contrary to the 1893 historic facade. Again, just to illustrate a little bit more clearly, on the upper right, you can see what the historic condition was with the columns directly underneath the rondels, and then the image below that shows that the rondel is here. I guess it's not going to show up there. And the columns are offset. I've enlarged the condition for you to understand a little bit better on the lower 4 pictures. They go from left to right across the building. So the left is the far western side of the western unit, then the east side of the western unit, then the west side of the east unit, and the east side of the east unit. The result of moving columns is that there can be deflection in the lintels, and create a kind of a deteriorated condition. SOI Standard 6 requires that deteriorated historic features should be repaired. The lintel has deflected, and as you can see from the image on the upper right, the gap between the brick and the lintel has been filled with grout over time to accommodate the deflection, and a stiffener plate of some sort has been installed to try to strengthen that connection to the brick wall. As we know, commissioners aren't structural engineers, and so one of the questions to be resolved is the corner stable, or does this require further investigation by an appropriate design official to determine the structural integrity that would allow operable windows in the storefront? Just to review, because this project was seen by before some of the commissioners have been seated, some of the current commissioners were seated. So in January of 2020, the proposal for the bulkhead was to have a flat bulkhead with some applied moldings. The commissioners at that review had requested that the storefront have a more traditional recessed panel appearance. And so at the direction of the HPC, staff forwarded the sketches on the right to the applicant that would match the detail taken from a photograph on the lower left showing the historic bulkhead condition. The applicants have now come back in April 2020 with a revised bulkhead on the upper left, showing that it would be representative of a historic recessed paneled bulkhead. Aside from the storefronts, the other issue for consideration is the primary entrance is going to be moved to the center door, which once served as the entrance to the second floor, and will now serve as the entrance to the new restaurant. Again, for those who weren't on the commission in January 2020, the existing condition is a step, and the owners are going to have to make that comply with handicap accessibility, and they've worked with both the Public Works and the Illinois Department of Transportation to develop an accessible ramp that will make the entrance accessible. And you'll also notice in the historic photograph that there was an iron railing that went around the east storefront facade, and that will serve as inspiration for the metal railing that will go around the new handicap accessible ramp. In the January 2020 review by the HPC, the question was raised about what the door would look like at the center entrance. The image on the right is what was submitted at that time. And the commission was hoping for a more historic-looking door. I've highlighted a image from the 1900 photograph that shows basically a 7-panel door appeared to be what was in the doorway at that time. However, that doorway was remodeled in the 1935 remodeling of the building, and an additional transom was added below the original arch transom, and a new door was installed. Sometime after 1979, a fairly generic steel embossed door with a single light was installed at this doorway. At the hearing the comments from the HPC, the applicant has provided details that show how the new door will be fitted within the historic jamb, and I've received word that they are working on the selection of a door that will be more in keeping with the historic appearance of the 1893 facade. As you saw in the submitted drawings, some of the work is proposed as future work, so to clarify what is being requested tonight versus what other things were on the drawings, I'm going to review quickly the proposed future work. The Phase 2 work includes cornice and pediment repair and painting, repair and repainting of the existing second floor windows, and masonry restoration. Aside from general pointing and repair of historic joints, there was an issue raised in the January 2020 meeting of the south, or the south east corner of the building had deteriorated. On both the State Street side and the First Street side. The commission in January 2020 had requested that information be submitted for the repair and correction of the failing corner. However, that work was not submitted, and it was patched with a masonry patch sometime last fall on both the State Street side and on the First Street side. Again, as mentioned earlier, that the steel lintel has deflected, and again, I think as part of the discussion, this is a deteriorated feature, and I think there needs to be some confirmation that this corner is not continuing to move because of the deflected lintel and the deterioration of the stone corner. And in the lower left picture, you can see that actually the concrete bulkhead that was installed in 1935 has actually cracked due to movement. Again, I bring this up because an operable storefront has very minimal tolerances for it to continue to function. And if the commission is going to approve an operable storefront, I think we also need to make sure that the building is stable, that that window would continue to operate. Other future work that's been identified in the drawings is the repair of the pediment, the metal pediment, and the painting of it at the upper roof line. If you've looked at the building, you notice there are some pieces missing that would need to be replicated in the future. Windows also need to be restored. Following the January 2020 review, the historic brick molding, which is shown in the upper right corner, was removed without approval and replaced with standard modern brick mold that was painted and installed. Also, the upper walls of the north facade are also visible from the street, so again, that would be something to be reviewed in the future phases of work to review the masonry repair proposal. So, of the 10 SOI standards that the commission is to review projects under, 9 of the 10 apply to this property. So all but standard number 8, which refers to archaeological elements, would be applicable to this request. With that, I have finished my review of this project for the commission. If you would like to turn it over to the applicants.
Okay, thank you, Michael. We have applicants in the audience for this project, correct? Yes. If you could step up to the dais if you have something to say.
Chairman, I guess I will also mention that we do have Nicholas Mannheim joining virtually if anybody does have questions or if you'd like to make any comments.
Okay, could you state your name for them?
Nick Smith.
Okay. Welcome, and do you have anything to add from the presentation that Michael had put together?
No.
Okay. Okay, great.
I guess a sincere thank you for putting all that together.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for taking on this project too. It's good to see that something is coming back at that point. Does anyone from the commission have comments about this project right now? Carolyn, I don't.
Don, Commissioner Don Hartman.
Okay, Don.
Hi. A couple of questions. The brick mold that was removed and replaced, will that be reinstalled to match the original brick mold on the exterior?
I think that's under the future work that's going to be done, correct?
Yes, that's identified under a future phase, so when they come in with phase 2, those would be all pertinent questions to ask at that time. But at this point, all the items in phase 2 are not fleshed out. for really discussion at this point. So they're really looking at the Phase 1, which deals with the storefronts. I just wanted to point out the other items on the drawings that you received are Phase 2, not Phase 1.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Mike.
Caroline, were you trying to unmute yourself?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to start off with the door. The historic door is considerably taller than the door that your drawings show, and I'd like to know why you've chosen to do that.
Does the architect online, does he want to respond to that?
I don't believe that's the case.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
So
The question was whether the door itself was considerably smaller than the original door, whether it was the door was, why it's smaller than it was, but I think it was smaller than the original door that was put in the 1900, but it's not smaller than the circa 1985 door, is that correct?
Sure, this is one of those cases where the commission has to determine a little bit about how buildings evolve over time. So while the original door only had the semicircular fan light, by 1935, so almost a century now, the extra transom was installed and a shorter door was installed. So the alteration from 1935 definitely falls within the period of significance for the Central Geneva Historic District. So the height does not have to go back to 1893. This is a change over time that's associated with one of the families that owned the building for a very long time.
Okay, all right, so I'd like to jump back into that. I think we as a commission have to make a decision about what period of significance we need for this building to go into the future. The request for the sliding windows certainly has nothing to do with the 1900 building or the building that's 150 years old. So if we deal with sliding windows, then I think the applicant has to come up with a date that they want all of the details to fall in that particular date, so that this building does not become a hodgepodge of different kinds and different decades. Now, the door that I see in our picture on our screen, it says circa 1985, and I know that's the door that I am familiar with. But the thing about this particular door is that it is all black, which gives this illusion of the 1900 7-panel wood door, which is also on our screen right now. So that would be for me a detail having to be determined. Now, if this door is going to be white on the bottom and black on the top, and then the black fan light, that's not going to work with the kind of detail that this particular very historic building is. It's a significant building, and I think we as a commission have to be careful about what we approve here.
I agree. I think Michael's got some comments about that specifically, and I think probably about the period of significance.
So the period of significance is the definition of when a building became significant and what period or the neighborhood became significant. And so the local Geneva Historic District has a fairly broad period of significance from 1835 to 1966. That does not require that every building be returned to a specific point in time within that period of significance. To go to Commissioner Zinke's point, the there is nothing in the Secretary of Interior standards that requires that an entire storefront be returned to, again, a specific date and time. So where there are elements that are missing, there are two choices under the Secretary of Interior standards. You can either provide a historic replication of that detail based on photo documentation, or you can offer a contemporary solution for replacement of an element, as long as that element can be removed in the future without detrimental impact on the rest of the building. So, again, you can certainly go the direction that Commissioner Zinke has identified, that coming up with a singular period of significance for the exterior, if the commission feels strongly about that. But the Secretary of Interior standards do allow for a broader period of significance for the facade of a building that has had substantial change, and allows for changes within that period of significance. Again, the Secretary of the Interior standards do not require the exact replication or restoration of elements. It does allow for contemporary elements to be inserted into a historic building. So I hope that clarifies a little bit what the standards allow, the flexibility of the standards allow the commission to either zero in very narrowly, or have a broader approach to how they would like to review the facade.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
This is Nick Smith, the applicant. The intention would be for the doorway to be dark, as I think most are familiar with it, to match the new storefronts, which also, of course, would be dark in terms of whether or not there's sliding windows, which is what we're proposing, or a storefront itself. The white, please don't be thrown off by the white of the left or the right. And Mr. Lambert, do you happen to have, we're actually going to have a custom-made door that actually kind of harkens back to, at one point, I can't remember the year, but the door actually wasn't a single hinge door, it was a double hinge door. Do you happen to have that the commission could see, or no?
I'm sorry, I did not put that one image in, but there is a door that's from about 1900,
Okay.
1920, that was a split double door with long lights in each leaf. And I had forwarded that on to them as to the applicants as a consideration when they were looking at doors. As I said, I believe in what Mr. Smith has just said, they're working on coming up with that door. So again, whatever you decide with the facade, the facade to approve or not to approve, you can put stipulations on it. So if one of the things is you want to see that door before it gets installed, that could certainly be a logical stipulation.
Yeah, that's the city, and I think the people of Geneva and everybody that's visiting, I think would be very happy with this door. It's super unique. I had never seen anything like it. You know, as far as it's going to be custom made, I didn't realize until Mr. Lambert was nice enough to bring it to our attention about the double swinging door, which unfortunately is not to code anymore and not possible. Think about like a cowboy saloon door almost, but with windows. But that's what we're going to have built. I can't give you shop drawings though, because it's custom built. You know, you get shop drawings when you're going to build something. So we have the architect Nick Mannheim submitted, you know, a proposal of what this would look like. I guess you would have to trust us and say yes from that.
Yeah, the drawings that you have that you've presented actually show a door that has like two glass lights and then
Yeah.
I don't know what the third is. That basically the look that you're going to? Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, this is Nicholas Mannheim, the architect.
Yes.
I believe it's page 8 of the agenda, and you see the two concepts. We try to mimic that, as Mr. Smith mentioned. We're trying to mimic it looking like two doors, but it is one single door. But we kind of use the components of that picture that Mr. Lambert sent us as our inspiration for our custom door.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Carolyn, or no? Okay. What's everyone's feeling about the two different versions of the storefront and the columns within the storefront. I'm gonna ask one question of the architect right now. You're showing right now the columns being kind of centered on the rondels. Is that the intent?
Well, no, that's probably not shown. So the pictures that Mr. Lambert provided, was not our intention to move the columns.
It's
So
not-
they're kind of they need to be shifted in the picture, but how they're displayed in that picture that Mr. Lambert had, that's how they are, and so they are kind of off. We're just using the existing columns, though.
Oh, you are?
Correct.
What's the,
Mike, oh,
This is George Stazen. I do have a couple questions and comments here. I was focused more on the two options of transom as well, both aesthetically was my major focus, but then Michael introduced some structural issues, and some of us do have a little bit more structural expertise than other of the commissioners. But when I hear deflection and possible corner movement, and we're already dimensioning the size of the transoms, I'm wondering if to remediate some of these situations, that there is not going to have to be additional structural modification to the lintel or beam, which could possibly change the size of the transoms. And then based on our experiences for another storefront just a couple blocks down the street with operable windows, we found that for months there were numerous submissions dealing with detailing issues that didn't come up until some of the other structural situation was corrected. And I guess with all that, I'm just wondering if this decision on the transoms is a little premature without completely understanding how we're going to remediate the structural issues. And Michael already mentioned it as well. With operable windows, there's very little tolerance for movement. And if the columns aren't under the round rules and there's deflection now, are those members still deflecting? Or have they reached equilibrium at this point? So it's kind of a roundabout way saying that I don't think that I would feel comfortable moving at this point in time and entertaining discussions without being 100% sure there won't need to be additional modifications before the size of the windows can be ascertained.
go ahead, Michael.
If I may, Mr. Smith, I'm going to jump in a little bit with what your architect, Mr. Mannheim, said. And Nicholas, if I state this wrong, correct me. But to your point, Commissioner Stazen, my understanding from talking with the architect earlier is that I think the applicants are really trying, at least tonight, to understand whether or not the commission embraces the operable window concept, so that they can proceed to the next stage with the structural engineer and the operable window company to get shop drawings. Is that a correct summary of where you're at?
That's correct.
Okay, so Commissioner Stazen, I mean, it may be that if the commission shares your concerns, that perhaps the full decision can't be made tonight, but at least the commission can give direction as to where they feel with this proposal so that they can move to that next step of investing in structural engineering and shop drawings, because that's kind of the next big, I think, not hurdle, but next big step for the moving forward on the storefront, if I understand that they're where they are in the process.
Okay, what I saw pretty complete construction documents. I just made the assumption initially we were sort of beyond that stage because the dimensions are, and detailing is pretty specific. But I would agree, I think I would be in a position to at least indicate a direction to the architect, the engineers, and owner at this time. But again, less comfortable reaching a final decision until we know that we're there for sure.
So, yeah, I think that what I think we want to get clear is the location, the size of the transom, or the concept size of the transom, and whether sliding windows are acceptable in this situation, and whether, and the concept of the elevation. And then, I think that as they work through the structural issues, as you open things up, you'll know more about what's going on, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if I can say this with brevity, the middle of this building is now gone. So if you have, as far as structural, doing this correctly, engineering, making sure it's done right, I feel like we've successfully removed the middle of the building on the inside. So I think you can rest assured that we would, of course, proceed correctly to make sure that it's something that is done for the next 100 years, next 200 years, whatever it may be. The last time some of you saw me, though, we were talking about a storefront that didn't move. Last year happened, of course, and it seems appropriate to at least give this building a fighting chance with open air, and having a more adaptable environment, especially given the, pandemic and whatnot. And this is, to be completely honest with you, something that we were trying to do in 2019 before anybody had ever heard of COVID. And we were fortunate enough to find this Renalta sliding system that I think, thankfully, in spirit, if you look at this picture that's in the middle, or I'm sorry, that's these people are standing in front of this building, I think we're capturing that spirit.
Okay, Lisa, did you
May
have
I ask a quick question about the two different options for the transom size? What is the motivating factor in having option one be option one? Is there a compelling reason why one wouldn't line up? I feel like the second option is the only option. I'm wondering if there was some sort of motivation for option for the first.
It's more open. I guess you get to a certain point that the more open something is I think there's a comfortable balance of how big the opening actually is. And I believe.
What is the height to the top of that sliding piece?
I believe it's 7 foot.
7 feet.
Correct. I can double check though. I can actually pull it up.
Yeah,
On the drawings, it's marked as 8 feet, and I think that's what Architect Mannheim had conferred with me previously, that they were standard 8-foot-high units.
Yeah, I feel like if we're going to do this and do it correctly, then it should line up to historical lines. I don't know that I have an issue with whether the windows are fixed versus sliding, but I definitely would want to see option 2 and have those lintel lines line up. So, at least with the entry. or excuse me, the transom lines.
Yes.
I have a question here.
Sure.
Don Hartman. Going back to what Lisa had commented on, what would be the height of the floor from floor to transom line? From finished floor to top of sliding window / transom, or also the bottom of the arch? What would that height be off the finished floor?
I believe that's 8 foot, correct? Okay, Nicholas, did you add?
It's going to vary from side to side. So the flagstone side will be, obviously it sits higher than the old Little Owl side.
So
So
the,
the transom line between the operating windows and the transom windows, that line will not interfere with a view sight from the inside?
No.
If it's kept at option 2?
Yeah, it's not ideal, in my opinion. That's why we came up with the first option. The second option was to be conscious of the arch. But part of the purpose of going to with the, as I mentioned to Mr. Lambert, the standard size as well, is to create that, and Mr. Smith mentioned it too, a more open feeling, and especially when you're inside, creating that more open feeling, looking out onto, Main Street, so that, to me, I think you're going to get the better visual from the inside outside, and I think it still stays within, to me, kind of the parameters of the historical storefront, where and I thought, if we kept the horizontal bands and our vertical bands very consistent like that we get a better feel conceptually with option A. So that's why we presented 2 options.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Mr. Warner, what's your feeling on the transoms?
I tend to favor the way it's depicted here. I concur with Commissioner McManus that I would favor that. I think there's plenty of light, and the size of the mullion will have small effect on the amount of light coming in, and not as much on the ventilation. If it's just natural ventilation to begin with. I don't know the difference between the 2 window sizes, but there could be 6 or 8 inches or 12-inch difference. I guess I would personally favor it mimicking the historic dimension. That's how I would fall. But before that, I'm really concerned about the stability of the building that was raised earlier, that I would like to know that it has been stabilized and that the patches have been done appropriately and that the building is not moving. So that's my primary concern, and then this can be dealt with in due course. So that would be my how I would view the vertical symmetry, the horizontal symmetry as we go left to right. I have a question for staff. Do you know why the columns do not rest underneath the rondels? Why would they have been moved in the 70s?
There's a lot of reasons why columns get moved and not being able to transport myself back to when those decisions were made. I really don't know, but it's not uncommon, as historic storefronts were modified in the mid-20th century for columns to either be removed entirely, which has led to several building failures over time, or be relocated. Sometimes, again, I'm assuming that maybe because of that regular light pattern that was created in that 1972 storefront, that it had to do with making those windows, that square window pattern symmetrical, but I really don't, that would just be conjecture. Going back also to your comment, Commissioner Warner, and this is something I brought up to Nicholas Mannheim, the architect, I think one of the concerns, and it goes back to Commissioner Stasen's point, even if the building's not moving, one of the things that I just want the commissioners to be aware of, if those bays are not square or fairly square, you're going to see more trim than what is depicted in the architectural details, because you're going to have to trim it out to the worst-case condition for the sliding windows to operate. And I only bring that up because, again, Commissioner Stasen referenced another storefront that the details kept changing, and I just want you to be aware, even though they're showing very minimal details here, I know the commission got very concerned about the amount of trim on a previous storefront. So I'm not saying that that is the condition, but that's why it's kind of critical to know what the deflection is and really how much trim is going to be around these new windows, whether they're fixed or whether they're sliding, doesn't matter. It's still not, if they're not perfectly square or very close to being square, there will be additional trim pieces that will have to be installed.
So just to follow up on that, I guess I would strongly favor considering returning the rhythm of the columns to what it was in the 1900 image, to move the columns under the rondels, and hopefully there might be some cost savings by having a more of a standard size or width of the windows.
Have you?
I'd like to jump in. I too am very concerned about the structure of the front and whether or not it's moving. And I know a patch was made without approval, but the patch was done. And I do think a structural engineer needs to look at the crack that's there right now and make a determination as to whether or not the front of the building is moving, because I don't think we can make a decision on windows until we know for sure that that is stable. It may turn out that it is not stable enough for sliding windows, and that the owner will have to come back and say, sorry, we can't do the sliding windows because the front of the building is not stable enough to support them, and we'll have to go with stationary windows. So I do think that we need to have some information from a structural engineer exactly about how that front of the building, how stable it is. And I personally am not going to be able to vote on anything tonight until we get that information.
Sure.
The question isn't whether the building is unstable. I don't want that to be misleading. The question is the sliding windows have a very minimal tolerance for deviation in the structure of the opening. So again, the applicant, both the owner and the architect, have confirmed that the next step is, if this concept is acceptable to the commission, their next step is to get a structural engineer and get the shop drawings for the windows, and that will have to be a modification to the permit if there's changes to that, and that would come back again to the commission if there's great deviations. So again, I don't want the commission to think that the building is unstable and in danger of collapse. That wasn't the point. The point was that there has been movement in the storefront, and it appears there's deflection, and to understand what the trim condition might be and whether they're plumb or what have you, that comes in the next phase of their structural engineering and their window shop drawings. So again, I think what I said earlier, and I got a nod from the applicant, Mr. Smith, that I think what they're really looking for right now is what are the details of the storefront that the commission will accept so they can proceed to the next stage to see what those actual final details are. As Commissioner Stasen said, these are pretty detailed drawings that have been submitted, and they're sufficient for the building permit application. But again, with any old structure, it's not like building a new structure. With an old structure, you've got to go back and record the field conditions. That's where they're at with the next step. So what they're really seeking tonight is is there consensus amongst the commission for this type of storefront? And is the commission more inclined to the option 1 with the transom height and the operable window height, or option 2 that aligns with the spring line more like the historic conditions? I think that's the crux, if I'm correct, Mr. Smith, that's the crux of what you need to understand tonight when you leave this meeting. I hope that.
But can I jump back in though? Michael,
Sure.
you did in your beginning presentation, you did point out a sizable crack underneath the east windows that are there now. And you did comment about the corner and the corner repair. I thought I understood from what you said was not sufficient for the movement that corner of the building is experiencing. So I was just piggybacking on what I thought you said.
To clarify what I was saying, I was identifying that that is not plumb and level at that corner, and I brought that up because there has been past movement. I'm not a structural engineer. We don't have structural engineering drawings submitted at this point to know if it's moved or how much it's moved, or if, as Commissioner Stasen said, has it settled into place? But those are all going to hinge on what those actual storefront windows, again, whether they're fixed or whether they're operable, what those storefront windows look like as far as trimming, if those openings are not square and level.
Don Hartman here.
Sure.
I have no issues with operational windows. I do lean towards concept B with the transom line at the bottom of the arch. And just coming from my experience, I know there might be some variables there, Michael, where where a square window is being installed in an opening that's not quite square, and there might be a small variance. But as what's being proposed, I have no issues with it at this point.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did the owner or the architect consider relocating the columns to restore the original symmetry? And if not, why not?
Do you want me to jump in?
Yeah, you can respond to that, please.
Sure. So they're not that far off. It's not like it's, feet off. So there wasn't we didn't really entertain it because of the cost of moving things and reshoring everything. As Mr. Smith mentioned, we did spend a significant amount of time and resources into opening up the inside. And as he mentioned, we do have a structural engineer as part of our team, and he was very integral in that and fixing everything in the inside. So we didn't really look at that from an exterior standpoint for lining up under the rondels. If it becomes a structural issue, that's a different story. But from just an aesthetic standpoint, it wasn't something that we looked at.
And so without putting words in your mouth, you're just going to live with the openings that were there, even though they're all irregular. You didn't look at making those a common size, or it's just living with the existing condition?
Yeah, because unfortunately, both sides are very different and would vary anyway. So I could understand if you would say, we looked at it and say, we could get all 7-foot wide doors, and there's some economics to that in manufacturing. But really, there's no way to really get them all to be completely equal.
So,
Just a final comment, Chairman?
yes,
I don't object to them not being onto the rondels, although it would be my preference that they did, but I don't think I can have a standing to, at least structurally, to oppose that. That would be my strong preference, that it all does line up that way. as far as a sliding portion, it is, what is depicted is a lot less objectionable than I guess I expected it to be. So, but as they say, the devil's in the details, and I'd like to see eventually how thick, just how deep that becomes and those shadow lines that it creates and that sort of thing. But yeah, in concept, I would support item B, option B.
Okay. Can I ask a question of the architect? Are the mullions shown graphically the size that they're going to be on the elevations, the south elevations?
Yes, that is correct.
They are shown to scale and everything?
Correct. Yeah, I worked with La Catina and got with their rep and used their CAD details. So I provided Mr. Lambert with several details, some section cuts as you see, showing that actual system. We set it back about 2 inches off the face, and I believe they are about 3 inches wide.
3 inches wide, and do they line up like they're shown on because the center mullion looks like a single mullion, so they do line
Correct.
up.
Yeah. So the door that kind of slides behind it lines up exactly behind it, so we're not creating a double line.
Yeah. Okay. So you're pretty confident that it's going to look pretty much like the elevations that you've shown. It's just that it could be slightly off because of the location of the columns that are actually there in a slightly different location, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
Looking at, can I jump in?
Sure.
Just so that I'm looking at the same thing everybody else is, I have been hearing people talking about option A and option B, and also option 1 and option 2. Now, on my computer screen, I've got option 2. I haven't had an option A or B. I've had option 1 or 2. So am I not seeing what other people are seeing?
Okay, I think what we're seeing is option 1 is on 101A, and option 2, which is the 6'10" height, which the larger transoms are 101A, 101B. So I think that's where the confusion comes in. I think for the larger transoms are on the first option, and backwards. The smaller transoms are on the first option, and the larger transoms are on the second option.
Okay, all right, good. I personally prefer the larger transoms because it looks somewhat more like the historic photograph that's up in the upper left-hand corner. That particular window is about the same height as the window in option 2. So I personally would prefer that because it lines up with the bottom of the arch, and that just seems to be, it just seems to look more historic, even though it obviously isn't going to be historic. And it looks a lot like the historic photograph that I'm looking at.
Do you have a problem with the sliding windows?
Yeah, I do. I think the sliding windows are very trendy right now, and since we live in northern Illinois, I really don't think they're going to be open all that much. I think they might be open in the beginning of spring and the beginning of fall, but as soon as the humidity raises, everybody's going to be in air conditioning. I think the windows will be closed then. They'll certainly be closed all winter. I think that these windows are not going to be open all that much.
Well,
So I'm just I'm
But,
just.
but what do you
no,
think of the look of the windows per se? I mean, is it an issue with the aesthetics of it?
Well, it certainly isn't historic in any way. It doesn't have a historic profile. And since this is one of our significant buildings and it is in a very prominent place on State Street, I just don't. I really don't like the sliding windows.
Okay.
I wish they were stationary windows.
Yeah.
Now, as to whether or not how I'll vote, I'm not sure yet.
Okay. Is the fact that they are and I'll ask this of the architect, they are gonna be, they're coming in as a package, right? They're not, the transom and the upper window, the transom and the lower window are not one unit, right?
They will be one unit.
Oh, they will be one unit.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is no structure between the two, the transom and the other part.
I'll have to verify that with La Catina based on the size, but I believe that's the intention.
Because it looked like intermediate. What number is that? That's A501.
It's A501 number 4.
Yeah.
Detail intermediate,
Yeah,
showing a 3-inch width on the elevation side.
yeah,
There's also something odd on existing lintel detail 5 right below it. It shows attachment to the lintel, but it actually shows the sliders there, not the transom.
yeah.
We were trying to mimic that horizontal band from the historical.
The historical with the 3-inch, the intermediate one.
The intermediate from some of the historical pictures provided, that horizontal band looks thicker.
Yeah. Is there, I wish we could know whether those sliding windows could be removed at a future point without taking out the transom.
Why would you want that, Paul?
Because one of the things is if it's a removable part that you can bring it back and put a regular storefront in there, it's more acceptable.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Do you agree, Michael?
The
Or,
frame is
I'm not
integral
agree, but
into
do-
the door,
is that-
so.
Is that the concept of that portion?
That's possible, yeah.
But how can we handle this? Because it sounds like we're going to be we're going to be kind of voting on something with a, they're going to go back and get the final shop drawings and then come back, or unless it's exactly what's shown here.
You could make a motion to approve what's been submitted with a list of stipulations, which is going to be a complicated motion probably.
Correct.
Or you could, I suppose the commission could make a motion to accept this in concept, subject to returning with shop drawings and details of the storefront before they proceed. That would not be uncommon compared to some other things that you've asked. In fact, I'll be reviewing a project like that at the end of the meeting tonight, that you asked for more information once they uncovered the existing conditions. But you did approve you did approve the project, subject to additional information being provided before they proceeded forward.
Okay. How does the commission feel about approving it with the idea that they would come back with additional information specifically about the, I think more of, because the shop drawings would be done, and you'd have a clearer idea of exactly what it looks like, more than just the concept of what it looks like. What does the commission feel about that?
I personally like that idea.
I can support the concept. I'd like to ask Chair,
Yes.
how you view the operable windows.
I think that if the operable windows were removable and they could be changed out as a fixed window at a later date, I would have no issue with them at all. I'm not sure I have a problem with the way they are either. I mean, but it would be a plus if they were removable at a later date that could come back and change out to a regular storefront without completely changing the whole transom and things like that. So at least we have some consistency of the transom. And actually, the shop drawings should be able to tell you that, correct? Nicholas, if you'd like to jump in on that, that would be great.
Okay, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, that's correct. And so, I mean, the big thing that kind of, and we've touched on it a little bit earlier, is in order to get shop drawings, that's why we're looking for approval to move forward. So La Cantina is not going to do shop drawings unless we know that we can move forward with the concept. And then we can really kind of flush out a lot of the details that I think the commission is looking for. As well as, as Mr. Smith mentioned, we'll bring our structural engineer in to look at some of those other things too, so we can flush out a lot of those details.
Yeah, so they won't actually do shop drawings without paying for them.
Yeah, I understand that.
So
Yeah, you got to put it to,
does everybody in the commission understand that? They will not do shop drawings unless I pay for them. We're talking about $50,000, just so we're all on the same page. No.
Can I just, I would think they would do shop drawings. Well, I suppose you could ask them.
I'm telling you, I'm telling you right now.
Is that the cost of the windows or the cost of the shop drawing?
No. That's the cost of the windows.
That's what I thought. Some firms will do shop drawings if you ask them for a fee, but maybe it's a distinction without importance, but I understand.
what's the feeling of the other commissioners on the sliding windows? I know that Caroline doesn't, I don't know that it's a showstopper for her, but it's not a, Lisa, do you have an opinion?
Are we saying that the windows as proposed here are something that could not be swapped out if placed at some point?
I think anything can happen. I mean, that anything with the right amount of money can happen. I just was curious.
Honestly, I don't necessarily have issue with a moving window. I think visually it might have a little bit of a plane difference from one pane to the next because they do have to slide beneath, one behind the other. But at the end of the day, I think that visually it has the right look. As long as we're running with option 2, I've said that from the beginning. And I don't have a problem with the windows as moving windows.
Don, do you have an opinion about that?
I have no issues with the operational sliding windows.
Okay.
So unofficially, they can put regular windows in later.
Oh, they can? Okay. That, I figured they probably could. It looked like the detail was set up to do that.
Well, and I was going to comment, I mean, Nick, the architect, you had commented that the sliders cannot come out without the transoms coming out.
No, if it's one integral system, then Are you talking about if it's one integral system, it might be more challenging? I don't know. Like I said, that'd be something we'd have to dig into.
Yeah, okay. I mean, just from my experience, I would think they could be removed with the transom still staying in there.
That's correct.
Okay, but I have no issues with sliding,
Okay,
uh,
yeah,
sliding
you,
out.
you heard
windows.
that, you found out that actually, you texted La Cantina or whatever?
They're listening, so
They're
he's
listening,
texting
okay,
me.
and they said that they can change out the window without changing out the transom, so unofficially, but it sounds like it can be done, which the details look like it's not that, shouldn't be overly complex to do. Have we heard from everyone? Has everyone said their piece on this? George, do you have anything more to say about this?
No, sliding windows, I certainly, don't have any, major objections with those either.
Okay. Really, our point then is the windows itself and the door. Is there anything else that we need to, the transom depth, so, but I think we've kind of hit on the fact that what I'm hearing from the commission is everyone likes option B, which is the larger transom. Or has a preference for option B, correct?
Correct for me. Hartman,
Yes.
Okay, are we ready to put together a motion for this? And I don't mean to direct someone to put together a motion, but I think we want to make sure that if the shop drawings come through, that they have to at least be reviewed by by staff unless they're slightly changed, unless they're largely changed from where it is.
I would prefer,
You would prefer that.
I would prefer for as much as you've had the discussion, as that it come back for the entire commission, not just rest on one staff person. Myself,
Okay.
thank you.
So if we're gonna put together a motion on this, that's where we should be going. Is there any other comments about the door size and the door type? Okay. With, Go ahead.
Can we review what the door is going to look like?
well, I think it's shown on the drawings is what they're trying to go after, which is it's like the existing door that's there, but it actually has glazing within it. And it's a custom-built two-light door. So, and then it'll also, the metal will all be the same color, correct? And it'll be a dark color.
Is the door being fabricated in wood or a composite, or just so they know that?
Composite is,
So I don't know if you heard that, but the door, the style is what's being depicted in the drawings, and it would be a composite material, painted, correct, painted. So it will have the look of a painted wood door.
a lot of times now, they're actually wrapped, which is interesting. It's kind of new territory for me.
Yeah, kind of a wrap
Yeah.
fiberglass, or a metal core with a wrap on the outside of it.
Somebody will have to show me a physical example of that. I'm not sure if that's,
Of how that
to me, it
works.
seems odd, but I'd like to see it in principle myself to see if that's something that, like longevity, and it's gonna get banged around a lot, obviously, if it will. I guess that's the whole point of it, is better wear and tear over time, but I'd like to see an example of that.
Since you're gonna get a shop drawing on that one also, right? I mean, you'll be getting something to approve on that, so I think you should bring that back to us to just go through the physical look of it, because I know that design drawings sometimes are slightly, they're not slightly different, but this is a concept and then the actual thing is a different thing. So, do you think we're ready to, I think we're ready to put together a motion if someone wants to do that.
I can do it. I just need so I can say that I move to approve the proposed exterior rehabilitation at 101 West State Street. And then saying that with future information forthcoming, and more leaning toward option 2, and that
I think we can be more specific. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think we can be more specific in that I think everyone on the commission prefers option 2, which is the 6'10" doors.
So I could say proposed exterior rehabilitation option 2
With
at 101
6'10",
West State Street.
yes.
Okay.
Since all the documents reference A and B, I would suggest to keep the nomenclature the same, calling 2 option B, as
Okay.
illustrated on sheet 101 B.
A101B.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm there. Okay, so, and now I just scrolled past the address.
That's
So
okay. I think what we want to
move
do is
to
kind of,
approve the exterior rehabilitation of, is it 101 West State Street? And option A 101B with future information pending.
I think
Could
what
I
we want to
make
say
a
is subject to
suggestion?
shop drawing
Just-
approval.
Yeah, subject to review and approval by
Subject to
HPC.
drawing approval.
I think we need to wordsmith that a little bit. If you could read it back to us and we can we'll get that into a form that we all agree.
Or I don't have to be the mover either.
I don't know.
I said I don't have to be the person that proposes the motion too, if someone has a better way of stating that.
We'll fine tune it. I'll have it.
You have to turn on your.
I'm sorry, we can fine tune the wording, but I've got a motion by Commissioner McManus to approve the exterior rehabilitation of 101 West State Street as option approving A 101B, and then in parentheses option 2, subject to shop drawing approval.
By HPC.
Oh, okay, approval by HPC, yeah,
Shop drawing approval by HPC,
okay.
including the custom door. Yeah, historic, yeah,
Okay, including custom storefront
and
and
door,
door. Right, okay.
okay?
Okay.
Do you think-
Just so this is not a surprise,
Correct,
I think this is too loosey-goosey for us to be doing to be making a decision and voting. So, either I will vote no or I'll vote pass, because I'm not going to be able to vote yes for this proposal, because it is, from my point of view, there are too many loose ends for me to vote yes right now.
okay, I think what we need to remember is that they need a direction so that we can, a concept of what we can approve, and the shop drawing will be more of the formal, this is what you're going to build approval. Do you agree with that? Is that,
I would agree. I think that I'll vote yes or no, but a vote is not going to lock you into exactly what was presented tonight. You're going to have a second swipe at this, if you will, when the shop drawings are submitted to make sure the details are exactly what you're looking for. And if not, they would have to go back and revise those shop drawings before fabrication began.
Yeah, and I think that if it looks like what it's shown here, it should go very smoothly. But if it comes back and it looks quite a bit different, we might have to deal with some of the details. Does that answer your question?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Well, how this feels to me right now is that this should have been a concept rather than coming to us for an approval. And we're talking about it as a concept since the drawings have to be approved by us at a future meeting. So I really don't understand why we are doing any kind of voting. This is, I've been on the commission 13, 14 years, and this has not happened, where this really is a concept and we're doing a vote on it.
Commissioner Zinke, if I may, the reason this is coming forward as a permit review is because this project is in permit review at the building division right now. So typically a concept review is done before any kind of permit drawings or permit application is made. But because this is in permit and there have been modifications made as they have continued the interior reconstruction and rehabilitation, the permit is being modified. So while the drawings are complete in a manner that satisfy the building division as far as what the elements of the reconstructed storefront are going to be, the submitted proposal, and this has occurred in other projects, the submitted proposal does not have enough details for the commission to be fully satisfied. So we have approved other permitted projects that are in process with stipulations for additional information. And I think that is what the gist of the motion is, and what the applicant is seeking is enough assurance from the commission that they can move forward to the next step to get those additional details that the commission is desirous of. It's not ideal, but as any of you who've dealt with a historic building before and a rehab of a historic building, you know that things come up and concepts change. And as Mr. Smith pointed out, they were moving forward with the fixed storefront windows that were approved in January 2020, but with the advent of COVID and some changing in the hospitality industry, they have made a request to alter their permit, and we have had other projects where permits have been altered. I think the only difference here is that some of the exact details that the commission's desirous of haven't been worked out, and it's not for an unwillingness of the applicant. It's a matter of wanting to have some assurance from the commission that this is the direction it should be going before they outlay a fairly significant amount of financial capital to get shop drawings completed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, we do have a motion on the, can I get a second on that motion?
I will second it. Warner?
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion on the motion? Okay, with that, I think we should call the roll.
Could we hear the motion again?
Sure. I have a motion by Commissioner McManus to approve the exterior rehabilitation of 101 West State Street, option A101B, subject to shop drawing approval by the HPC, including the custom storefront and door. And second by Warner.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay. Hartman,
Aye.
McManus,
Aye.
Stazen,
Aye.
Warner,
Aye.
Zinke,
Aye.
And Chairman Zelmer.
Aye.
That passes.
Motion passes. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for coming. And
Stay safe. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you.
thank you. Okay. Our next up permit review is for 522 James Street.
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. 522 James Street is a residential property located in the southwest corner of the local Geneva Historic District and is located in the Central Geneva Historic District listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Computer catch up with me. The house at this property was built in 1917 for Frank Albin. The house was reportedly constructed by the Wilson brothers, however, that's not been confirmed. The house was built simultaneously with the neighboring house to the west at 528 James Street that was built for Albin's daughter and son-in-law, Cleo and Claude Toombs. Frank Albin was a dealer in horse and cattle and lived at this home until his death in 1945. After Frank Albin's death in 1945, his widow Miriam sold the house and moved to Indiana to live with their son John. I pulled this image of the 1950s image of the property from the 2012 application for earlier work that was done, so that you can see what the house looked like historically. The current owners and applicants, Jason and Johanna Patterson, acquired the heavily altered house and undertook a major renovation in 2012 that was approved by the HPC. These images show what the house looked like before the 2012 renovation. The renovation included the replacement of windows, the installation of fiber cement siding that replicated the original clapboard and shingle siding, and in addition, to the west or right side of the building and towards the rear. This project was completed nearly 10 years ago. This is a current view of the house as it stands today. So the left upper image is straight on. The east side is exposed in the upper right view, and the lower right view exposes the west facade with the west elevation with the rear addition constructed in 2012. So the applicants are proposing to build a small addition to the east side of the home. The front of the addition will begin approximately where the red line is noted on this picture. This is about 45 feet from the front of the property line at the sidewalk. The proposed north front wall of the addition will extend eastward towards the alley approximately 10 feet and then southward approximately approximately 10 feet beyond the existing back wall of the house. The proposed siding of the addition will match the 2012 renovations using fiber cement hardy board and Pella windows, and will blend with the 2012 renovation. The applicants have also submitted an alternate design for the north wall of the proposed addition, which will be following here in just a few images. So this is the proposed north front addition, proposed north elevation of the front addition. This is the original concept. It has a hipped roof that mimics the hipped roof of the front porch and helps make the addition less impactful on the historic house. The east side is shown here in the original option. For your consideration, the owners have also provided this alternative with a gable end facing the James Street at the north side of the addition, and it could be built with or without the small square window that's shown. And how that looks on the east side from the alley would be this elevation. The project is subject to 8 of the 10 SOI standards, so those would be standards 1 through 6, 9, and 10. I've provided those standards here for reference if the commission needs to review those 10 standards. It's a very small addition to the home, and it is located on the east side and set back from the front facade, and at that, I would turn it over to the applicants if they're available.
Hi, this is Jason Patterson. I'm with my wife, Johanna. Thank you, Mr. Lambert, for taking the HPC through this, and thank you for your help to prepare for this. It's much appreciated. And thank you to the Historic Preservation Committee for hearing our plans as well. It's been a while, but we're happy to be back in front of you guys. I guess I don't know what else to add to what Mr. Lambert said. A few contextual details. The addition is to support a larger kitchen for the home, as well as a living area in the rear of the home. As Mr. Lambert took you through, we have a couple alternative designs. We have submitted to the city for a permit application the design that I believe is shown here, which is the, and forgive my lack of architectural knowledge, but this would be the hip roof that is consistent with the front porch. The alternative design that we have is the shed roof is something we actually prefer, but knowing that we want to keep with some standards that you may agree with, we're happy to entertain or even go with the hip roof design. The square window is an option for us. We prefer not to have that because it does disrupt the interior design of the kitchen. But we wanted to present that as an option as well. I think I'm looking at my wife, Johanna, if there's any details that I missed. Otherwise, we look forward to your comments and questions.
I would just add that obviously these are architectural drawings and they obviously do not depict landscape drawings. We do have a large tree kind of in the corner now as it stands that covers a lot of this. Yeah, you can see the sumac there that's obviously without leaves. And then we also obviously plan extensive landscaping around the addition as well to mask not mask it, but to add to the exterior.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments from the commission? Mr. Warner, do you have anything to say?
No, it looks good. No comments. I think the owners said they preferred that elevation, the original one that matches the shape of the front porch. I think that's the one I favor as well. So that's my only comment.
Okay.
Well done.
What's it?
They actually prefer the alternate, but this does, yeah.
Okay. Johanna and Jason, which version do you prefer? The hip roof or the gable end?
What I like about this alternate option is that it carries the shingle over to that side as well, but really it doesn't. I don't love the roof line as well on this one. I like the roof line on the other one. I just like that the shingles come through on this elevation. So it's kind of 6 to 1, half a dozen to another. Our preference is to not have the window there because of what it does to the interior design. Mm-hmm. And then instead supplement with exterior landscaping.
Okay. Lisa, do you have any comments about either option or one or option or the alternate?
I really don't. I mean, like the applicant said, if if there's landscaping in front of it, and obviously you're going to see it more in the winter when the leaves are gone, but I think both of them, I mean, it's set back from the facade, so that certainly helps in having it not conflict with anything that was, truly historic in that end. I'm in support of, honestly, either option. I do sort of prefer the one that's in front of us right now, this one with the shed roof. I think that's what I'm looking at, yeah.
Hip roof, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's, either option to me is appropriate.
Okay. Caroline, what's your thoughts on option one versus, or Don, go ahead.
I have no issues with either elevation. I mean, the hip roof favors the front porch, and the gable favors the gable above it with the shakes. I really have no issues with anything on here. I guess the one question I do have is the lap exposure to the siding, will it match the existing house?
Yes.
It will.
Yes.
Okay. No, that's about it. I think everything looks really good.
Thank you.
Okay. George or Caroline, your opinion?
Yeah, this is Stazen. I did hear about the preference to not add that other window on the north elevation, but where did it come from, and then why was it introduced?
It was introduced as a way to match the addition that was done on the right side or the west side.
To make it symmetrical,
yes,
to some degree.
Yes.
But that wasn't your idea? Was that, Michael, did that come from staff or?
The discussion in talking with Jason Johanna was just whether or not the commission might have an issue with a blank wall to the front, and so they were looking at options.
Okay.
I don't think that there was any strong opinion either way. It was just trying to have, I think so there wasn't a delay. If a commissioner asked what would it look like with a window, the Pattersons came prepared to show you what that would look like.
Okay, I was just motivationally, I was just kind of curious how it originated. I'm not particularly fond of it, but at least I know where it came from now. Thank you.
Carolyn, do you have an opinion about the option or the original versus the optional?
Well, since this addition is so far back from the front of the house, I think that either of the two will be fine.
Okay. What's it? Yeah, I think what we would want to do is if we're going to have if we're going to get a motion to approve this, we should either say option or the original presented or the optional elevation. So it's kind of what I'm hearing from the commission is they don't have a strong opinion one way or another, and I'm not sure. Jason and Johanna, do you have a strong opinion one way or another?
We go back and forth.
Okay.
We like the roof structure of the one, and we like the shingle.
Yeah, the shingle
other,
detail on the gable. I tend to prefer the original drawing or the original option, or the original design, I should say, and with the hip roof to match. I think that's going to be less obtrusive than the other one.
Okay.
But I don't see personally any issues with any of the, with the rest of it. It seems, it's not overpowering the house, and it is, it's a step back so you can see exactly what the existing house was originally. So can I get a commissioner to get a motion together?
You're so shy.
I'll give it a shot. This
Okay.
is George Stazen. I move that we approve the submission on 522 James Street for the proposed addition, with the elements of a hip roof without the window on the north elevation. Does that cover everything?
I think so.
Seconds by who?
Can I get a
I'll second
second?
that motion.
Okay, that was Don.
Ms. Hartman?
Hartman? Any other discussion? If you could call the roll.
Hartman?
Aye.
McManus?
Aye.
Stazen?
Aye.
Warner?
Aye.
Zinke?
Aye.
Chairman Zelmer?
Aye.
That passes.
Thank you, Jason and Johanna.
Commissioners, we thank you very much. I just want to add on a personal note that we chose specifically to live in the historic district. We believe in and appreciate what you do for our town, and it's our goal to continue to keep our house up to the highest integrity of its historical presence. So thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is staff updates.
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. We have two items under the staff updates. I'll get right into them. The first one is a review of color, permanent and semi-permanent materials. Based on the text of the Geneva Historic Preservation Ordinance as developed between 2014 and 2016, in combination with recent case reviews and commissioner comments and interpretations, staff believes that a review of this commission provision will be beneficial to newer and longtime commissioners as well as to staff when reviewing future cases before the HPC. Whether richly vibrant or monochromatic, color plays an important role in how architecture is perceived and how historic neighborhoods establish an authentic sense of place and time. Depending on the style, certain colors and palettes are associated with the various historic styles that are represented across the United States. Historic architectural styles are associated with color palettes that reflect the architectural traditions of the style. Within these color palettes, a wide range of colors exist. Historic neighborhoods made up of historic buildings of many architectural styles derive their sense of place and character because of the diversity and character of a variety of those architectural styles. Tones, hues, and combinations of color are highly personal because every person sees color differently. However, in general, palettes of color are typically associated with specific traditional and contemporary architectural styles and often establish the character of a particular street or neighborhood. Whether on individual buildings or across entire neighborhoods, color can have a significant impact on how the architecture of a building is perceived, as this example of row houses convey. At the left, shades of off-white combine, integrate, and blend to create a play of light and shadow. The same design of the next two row houses to the right are examples of how color is used to accentuate and enhance the architecture of the building. The far right row house utilizes color to conceal and obscure the architectural detail of the building is identical to the row houses to the left. Tonight's discussion is not an exercise to expand review authority of the HPC, but a discussion to clarify the expectations of the HPC so that staff can appropriately advise future applicants. So regarding color review, what is the legal authority of the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission? Between 2014 and 2016, the Commission and City Council reviewed multiple texts before adopting the current Historic Preservation Ordinance with the text on the screen. At that time, the Historic Preservation Commission reviewed and recommended the language identifying the Commission's responsibility when reviewing specific materials and colors. A significant impetus was the public's and Commission's outcry to two non-historic blue metal roofs that were considered out of character for the historic district. As outlined in Section 10-6-2 of the Geneva City Code, the Historic Preservation Commission is provided with the opportunity to review permanent or semi-permanent materials for compatibility with the architectural style of a building and for general compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood and environs. The text does not eliminate the ability to review certain materials and colors for compatibility. However, the text does require that review and comment be based on historic precedents and not on personal opinion. The adopted ordinance language suggests that the Commission's responsibility is to possess the knowledge of historic styles, to approve the color of enduring materials that represent the authenticity of architectural periods, and being responsible to other property owners within a historic neighborhood. So what is the Commission's responsibility and interpretation of the adopted ordinance text? Breaking down the primary words of the text, first we start with permanent and semi-permanent. These are definitions for terms used specifically in the adopted ordinance. Permanence, meaning the enduring without fundamental or marked change, and semi-permanent, intending to last for a long time, but not necessarily permanently. We also use the words reversible and temporary. Reversible means so that something is capable of being altered so that the previous state or situation can be restored, while temporary means that it's only intended to last for a brief period of time. If you look at the examples in the ordinance, notably, perhaps asphalt shingles are miscategorized in the ordinance, should be considered a permanent material based on the typical longevity of shingles having a 20 to 30 year lifespan or more. When I first arrived at Geneva, I was told by quite a few residents and staff members about the controversial blue roofs that were considered by many to be inappropriate in the Geneva Historic District. So what materials should the Commission be reviewing as semi-permanent or permanent colors? In recent years, the Commission has required samples of those construction materials with factory-applied and integral finishes to be provided to and approved by the Commission. If that direction is changing, why is that, and what is the expectation moving forward? Is the requirement for color review applied equally and consistently from one applicant to another? Is there a discernible difference among commissioners to identify period or stylistically appropriate color palettes versus selecting or requiring specific colors for specific architectural styles? We use the term compatibility, but perhaps we need to clarify what that means to the Commission. Does that mean compatible to only the details and style of a historic building? Does the ordinance definition suggest to the Commission that temporary, as in field-applied traditional paint, color schemes of only historic buildings are free from review? Should period-inspired design reflect the color palette of the period from which the inspiration is drawn? Or should contemporary infill architecture not be reviewed for any color, since stylistic elements of an emerging architectural style are rarely definable in its own time and space? One architectural critic has this to say about compatibility. Summarizing, compatibility requires more than similarities of massing or abstract references. What makes buildings from different eras and styles compatible is that they share the same underlying principles of space, structure, elements, composition, proportion, ornament, and character. Through the decades, the local community vision has been to develop a historic district that preserves the authentic character of historic Geneva. For the Commission, does contextualism refer to only preserving the authentic architectural details of individual buildings? Or does contextualism refer to assuring that a sense of time and place is preserved for an individual property or an entire neighborhood through the approval of documented design, which may include materials, elements, and a period-appropriate palette of colors? In the book, Architectural Design for Traditional Neighborhoods, the authors assert that neighborhoods or street blocks are a delicate balance of variety and repetition linked together as a group and is not a collection of individual entities. At Geneva, the Commission is specifically directed to make determinations based on several standards, including photo documentation, the adopted design guidelines for historic properties, and the SOI standards. The Commission is discouraged from making determinations based on personal opinion. The distinction is a fine line, but basing a determination on fact or knowledge rather than personal preferences should be the goal of the Commission. General paint schemes are customarily associated with various periods of architecture. The differences of architectural color palettes reflects the evolutionary and authentic nature of American architecture. While a variety of paint schemes are associated with each architectural style, documentation over time has revealed general tonal trends associated with historic architectural styles. Should those generally accepted traditional palettes be extended to new construction as period inspired? These real-life examples of controversial painted historic buildings met guidelines within their respective communities. As field-applied paint, the colors are reversible. However, if any of these requests had come before our commission utilizing materials with factory-applied finishes with a 15 to 30-year color fastness warranty, would the commission determine that the color schemes are compatible to the architecture or neighborhood and therefore approvable? There is a significant difference between accepting a color preference based on personal taste or opinion as opposed to accepting a paint scheme based on historic precedents. In the case of infill construction, should color be based on colors traditionally associated with the inspirational period of architecture? Should infill design be encouraged to be contemporary and not reference traditional architectural styles, thereby relieving the commission of a determination of color compatibility for a building or a neighborhood? Is color, either factory applied or field applied, one way or the best way to provide differentiation between historically significant or character defining elements and non-historically significant elements? Some communities limit their color review to requiring a variety of color, a minimum of 2 colors, that is reflective of that architectural style and neighborhood, and does not explore the issue of color any further. Is that the type of policy our HPC should consider? Communities and commissions in historic communities review color in a lot of different ways. I've provided over the next couple of slides, which you've had the opportunity to see ahead of the meeting, how different commissions review color and their approach to reviewing both field applied and factory finished materials. Should there be a differentiation between field applied and factory applied finishes? Is there a desire for developing period-appropriate palettes of color? Approving palettes keeps the commission from becoming the fashion police in regard to specific color schemes. At the sake of the hour, I won't read each of these different options of how various commissions review color in their community. However, these were all pulled from colleagues across the country who shared their experience with how their commissions review color in their historic districts. And I think one of the interesting comments is something we've dealt with here on the commission ourselves. When the ordinance was written, we distinguished between semi-permanent and permanent colors, where it appears that most of my colleagues across the country have adopted the precedent of discussing field painted colors versus factory applied colors. Some communities are concerned with color compatibility throughout a neighborhood and have developed sample palettes for use within their community. Should we identify appropriate colors for Geneva buildings based on periods of significance or construction date or period of inspiration in the case of new traditional infill designs? Is a phrase as follows: appropriate and sufficient for permanent and semi-permanent materials? Architectural features shall have colors and finishes appropriate to the nature of the materials and to the character of the original building. Who makes that determination? The commission or staff? If based on historic precedents, is white an appropriate color for Victorian era houses? They may have been painted in a diverse palette of color when built, but may have been painted white after World War I when the U.S. military sold off surplus white paint. In fact, many Victorian-era homes were painted white for many more years than they were painted in their original polychromatic schemes. As identified by one of my colleagues, the consideration of color is often defined by whether the change of color changes the way that feature is perceived in a historic building or in new construction in a historic neighborhood. One of my colleagues in Michigan does use the term semi-permanent and permanent materials, but closely defines how those terms are applied and how the commission regulates colors. And again, you can read her quote and how they do that in Michigan. For your reference, I supplied a sampling of other communities across the country and how they have dealt with colors. Many commissions differentiate between approving broad color palettes versus reviewing specific colors for a specific project. One of the things to note that reading about how color is regulated in other communities, a distinction was made about living in a historic district versus a homeowners association. In homeowners associations, regulation is made by choice, regulated by those who choose to live in a specific controlled neighborhood. Where in a historic district, color regulations are often based on the historic precedents established by those who lived in the neighborhood before our generation. So we have had a couple of discussions lately about factory finished siding, and we've actually come to different conclusions in several cases. One, we went through great lengths talking about color and approving color, and another one we did not. So should factory finished siding trim materials be required to be consistent with traditional paint schemes found within the local district or be similar to approved historic palettes? My colleague in Minneapolis says that they would consider the finishes of fiber cement and composite siding to be permanent, but it then puts a caveat on that they've not seen factory applied finishes fail to a significant extent, or bases that opinion on that factory applied finishes have not failed to a significant effect. One of the questions that was raised in a recent discussion was about the permanence of finish, and as an example of that nothing may be permanent, I'm providing examples of how factory-applied finishes can be recoated and repainted. So again, the next few slides just show that in a quick internet search on each of these types of materials, there were numerous products or numerous blogs that explained how you could refinish pre-finished cement or pre-finished materials. So the question arises, where'd that go? Hang on. So the question arises, does an enduring factory-applied finish have a more profound impact on an individual building or neighborhood than a temporary field-applied finish? And what is the test for reversibility? So just as fiber cement can be finished, brick can be changed in color, it can be painted, it can be stained. Aluminum-clad windows, which are considered a fairly permanent coloration, can be painted, just as vinyl windows and wood windows can be painted as well. Metal roofing, although again is considered a semi-permanent or permanent finish, also is easily repainted and in some areas of the country are painted with regular frequency, and we would not review the replacement color. And I guess this example of this McDonald's shows that almost anything can be painted from shingle, brick, stone, or metal to create a different look. So does an enduring factory-applied finish have a more profound impact on, again, on an individual building or a neighborhood? This again was just a quote from one of the commissions that actually is probably the most restrictive I found in the one of the most restrictive I found in the country that does actually require submittal of color palettes for approval. So the question gets down to again understanding some of the other words that are thrown into our ordinance and our discussions on how the commissioners view these words. Again, traditional palette is a range of colors, and a colorway are a combination of colors available for a particular style. Most importantly, our commission strives to be consistent so that we are fair, we are credible, and we reduce the chance of appeals. So we need to ask ourselves, do we treat all applicants' requests when we're looking at semi-permanent and permanent materials or factory-applied and field-applied materials with the same and equal scrutiny? The Geneva Historic Preservation Ordinance does not state that colors may not be discussed ever. However, the ordinance defines a narrow scope of review for the colors of specific materials. The Commission should determine what materials in general require review, if any. However, per the ordinance, the review of colors should be based on definitive judgment, as in the documented appropriateness for a particular style or era of architecture, or in relationship to the context of a street block or neighborhood. That said, a specific color or color scheme has never been mandated by the Commission, at least during my time here. While it is a subtle but critical distinction between approving specific colors and identifying the appropriateness of a range of colors, color plays a significant role in the historic character of an individual building or the appearance of a neighborhood. Given that distinction, is the review of the specific color scheme for a project different than reviewing a project for compatibility with a color palette that is complementary to a particular style of architecture or an established neighborhood aesthetic? Based on the responsibilities outlined in the adopted ordinance, how does the Commission want to proceed? Should we refine existing ordinance language? Do we need to define the review of color more clearly? Do we need to define materials by field applied and factory applied finishes rather than temporary, semi-permanent, or permanent finishes? Should we seek variety in color compositions? Does staff need to provide more information about period appropriate colors or color palettes within a specific neighborhood or street block to either applicants or to the commission as a whole? Or does the commission not want to consider color of any material, recommending only black and white renderings and a list of samples of building materials, preferably submitted without any indication of color? This is a tough work. I'm not expecting answers tonight, although we can discuss any of these items tonight. But these are the difficult fine points that a commission must determine so that they can apply the review of color consistently across all applications in a designated historic district. So, I don't know if you have any comments or questions tonight, or you want to think on all of that. But again, I think those are all important points that need to be considered as we interpret what our responsibilities are under the adopted ordinance here at the City of Geneva. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the commission?
Don here. Thank you for that information, Michael. A lot of things was brought to my attention. I don't know if this is something we wanted to discuss right now. I just have one question. So, right now, someone in the historic district can paint their home any color they want, but if there is a new construction or additional work being done on a home, that would possibly, a color scheme would possibly come into play in front of the commission?
When the ordinance was discussed and adopted, the discussion was that, again, if it was a integral color, I'm going to use that word right now, an integral color to a material that would not change could not be changed with ease or frequency, then that was subject to HPC review, and that's how we've kind of proceeded. Again, with the advancement of technology and the advancement of paints, almost anything can be painted and recoated these days, things that traditionally weren't recoated or repainted if they had a factory applied finish. So I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but the intent was that those materials that would have some sense of permanence and longevity in the historic district should be reviewed to make sure they were compatible with the historic district and neighboring properties.
Okay, no, that's a helpful answer. Thank you, Michael.
And again, one reason I bring this forward is because with the exception of, I think, just one of you now, I don't think most or all of you as commissioners were not on the commission when this discussion occurred back in 2014, 2016. So you may have different viewpoints than the commission did at that time.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Michael, can I ask, is there any particular reason why you were bringing this up? Has there been some issues about color and some complaints?
There had not been complaints. From a staff perspective, I had concerns because we've had some questions come about specific colors or specific materials while we're reviewing them. And I also wanted to make sure that we are treating every applicant equally. We had a case about a year ago that went through some pretty lengthy discussions about the factory applied finishes on almost every aspect of the exterior. And we had one more recently that the comment that was made during the meeting was that it could be changed, so wasn't sure why we were discussing it. So my goal is always to make sure that I have a clear direction when I'm talking with potential applicants about their projects, what the expectations of the commission is. Did that answer your question, Commissioner Zinke?
I think so.
Okay.
And I think I am the only commissioner who was on the commission at the time when we had these initial discussions.
I think so.
Yeah,
And that's all right. I mean, again, my point is that there's not a right or a wrong. This is a topic that changes with evolving technology, and it changes from, different commissions look at it differently as time evolves. And I thought it was just an appropriate discussion because, as you said, you're the only one on the commission now, Commissioner Zinke, who was here in 2014 to 16 when we were having these discussions.
right, right. Well, I would be interested in hearing what my fellow commissioners feel about color issues. Maybe not tonight because it is getting late, but it would be a worthwhile conversation in the future.
Yeah, I think it might be appropriate to just kind of mold this in our minds a little bit, and hopefully can I say in May we may be back together?
Maybe.
In May we may be live in the room, and it might be a more lively discussion in May. And I think that I have a hard time with the color with factory finish versus non-factory finish being we review something that is not factory finished, but we don't review something that's field applied, but we do review something that's factory finished when it comes to, because it comes down to almost everything can be factory finished now, and a lot of people want that because it becomes a maintenance-free. It becomes maintenance-free when you start to go with the cement board siding. So that's kind of do we start to deal with if they're going to put hardy board on their houses, we have an opinion about what the color is. Just food for thought on that, and I think do you think we can table this till next time?
Yeah, I think this should be an ongoing discussion. I don't think there's a deadline on this. Like I said, I was very intrigued by one of my colleagues that they no longer discuss any colors. They all have all their submittals in black and white and reference no color whatsoever and hope for the best. I'm not sure that's necessarily the best route either. But I just wanted to present this all in kind of a compact as that was or wasn't. So that you can think about all the nuances of what the responsibility of color selection is as outlined in the ordinance right now. So if that's all the questions, I can move on to the second item and we can continue this discussion.
I think we'd probably all want to continue this discussion at a later date, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll take one as a yes. No. Okay, Michael, your item number 2.
The next item is just a project update for the commission based on your previous direction. If you remember, in February, we reviewed a case at 422 West State Street, and the motion was made to approve the removal of a 1957 bay window with the stipulation that staff review the condition of the stone following the removal of the bay window. That bay window was removed approximately a week ago. And so if you haven't been by it, this is what it looks like currently with the bay window removed. And I've been working with the contractor to look at specific issues. So one of the issues is that the bay window was anchored anchored into the stone sills. So if you see the holes on the stone sill, those are actual metal anchors that were drilled into the stone to support the bay window. And that's on the left. And then on the right, the structural lintel over the first floor window has cracked completely through and needs to be repaired or addressed. And I'm happy to say the contractor is working with a masonry restoration company, and I received several emails today with different approaches how they can make these repairs. If you can see the lintel at the first floor windows, the one that's cracked, actually has a bush hammered pattern to it. So it's a specific type of series of hammers that were used to finish that lintel, and so we don't want to lose that lintel itself. Whoop, it's gonna go. Okay. Also revealed is the stone is getting quite dirty, so they're looking at appropriate cleaning methods. And on the left image, you'll see there's actually some stone missing that's gotten displaced. So they're working on finding a match to that stone that would be the same color and depth. They've also sent the mortar out for analysis, and we've received some preliminary recommendations back as of this afternoon for an appropriate masonry that's not too hard, that will damage the stone and have some movement and flexibility. Again, on the right side, you can see some of the dirt and just general cleaning that needs to be done on the stone. What was revealed is one of the things that may have led to the cracking of that stone lintel is one corner of the building has a fairly significant structural crack, as seen on the right side. That's being investigated right now to see if that's a foundational issue or some other issue, but it may be changing the stresses going through the front wall of the building. Also adding to that, if you look at the lower left, you'll see that the basement window has been infilled with very hard brick and a very hard cement mortar. And they're investigating whether or not that is such a stiff fix that that's also changing the way the building is moving. Limestone buildings do move to some degree. And if that's actually causing stress throughout the rest of the wall, that is also leading to the cracking of that upper lintel itself. So I just wanted to assure you that based on your stipulation, I have been meeting with the contractor. The contractor has been very amenable to looking at proper restoration techniques, looking at proper mortar, and looking at stone repairs and correcting structural issues to make sure that the building will survive another 170 years down the road. So just wanted to keep you informed. So are there any questions about that project or about that progress?
I just want to say thank you, Michael, for doing that.
You're very welcome. That's all I have.
Michael, this is Stazen. I've got a question. I'm fairly well versed in this area, as you know from some of our conversations. Is there any way I could participate in any of these interactions, or is that prohibited by the relationship of a commissioner, et cetera, et cetera?
If you would be interested in being included in the results from the labs and having comment on that, I think that would be welcomed by the owner and the contractor. So I can certainly, if you are interested in being kept apprised on that level of detail, I'm glad to do that.
That'd be great.
Anyone else?
Okay, next on our agenda is any announcements from the commissioners? Doesn't look like it. We don't have any public left, so I think we're good with that. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn
I so move.
and get a second?
Second, Warner.
Very good. Do we call it, or? All in favor, say
Aye.
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 any opposed? Okay, ayes have it, we are adjourned.